I think there's a wide range of opinions on TEEs. Some people really believe in them. I've also heard from somebody much smarter than me that SGX is getting exploited every 6 months. Where do you fall in there? And then how do we circumvent the risks?
A lot of controversy has been around like trusted execution environments.
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, on one hand, why we are leveraging these mobile devices is, like I've said, right? These are in your pocket. You're carrying them around. There are billions of these devices essentially out there, right?
Right.
And you have companies like Google and Apple, essentially, they have all the incentive to keep these trusted execution environments unbroken because
the launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys, blasting off with Pascal Brun. He's the co-founder of Acurast, an Oracle project in the Polkadot ecosystem. Pascal, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we did a little video on you guys a couple weeks ago. Thought it was really interesting. You guys are using TEE technology.
Yes.
You have an interesting economy with a few actors in it. Let's get into that later in the show. But just to start us off, what's kind of the overview of what you're trying to achieve with Acurast?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, but let's dive into it.
Is it a tough question?
It depends a bit from which perspective you're looking at it. But I mean, in general, what we are kind of saying that Acurast essentially is a confidential computing platform. So what this means is that we can enable off-chain data and computation to be brought on-chain in the end. So kind of bridging the Web2 world with the Web3 world, right? So having kind of use cases like price feeds for DeFi, verifiable randomness for NFTs, or kind of the lower hanging use cases that we see now, because that's also where a lot of demand is. But with the architecture and the setup that Acurast has, it essentially doesn't matter that we only support price feeds or verifiable randomness, because it's completely kind of generic, right? So we empower the developer to define the requirements for their use case in code. And then that is then being run in what you've mentioned, the TE, the trusted execution environments of the data transmitters.
Okay, so do you think Oracle, it kind of undersells what you guys are trying to do here?
Yes, I mean, that's always a good question that we are getting, right? So is it an Oracle or not? And it's also a bit of a mixed bag, kind of the terminology Oracle, right? If you talk to someone in the Web3 space, for example, they have an understanding, right? It's something that comes from off-chain and goes on-chain. But usually it's like very focused on like price feeds.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of the understanding. Okay, if I hear Oracle, you're doing price feeds, right? So that's why we kind of avoid it. And on the other side, we also have conversations with like enterprises. And if you mention Oracle to them, they think like, what has a database company essentially based in the US do anything with your project, right? Because Oracle, that's a big name to them that has a lot of baggage already attached to it.
Right. Okay. So you guys don't use that term necessarily with the clients that you're trying to bring on?
Yes. I mean, especially when we talk to like enterprises.
Okay.
Definitely they're not, right? Because then they really have that's kind of assumption and it clicks for them.
Yeah.
Like it clicks for a few people in the Web3 space when they only focus then on price feeds, right? And that's not the thing that Acurast can only do. Obviously, it enables that use case, but it's way broader. So that's why I always say it's a bit a loaded term, right? That comes.
Well, it was a bit of a buzzword in crypto, 2 years ago, in 2021, right? When Chainlink came out. What did oracles look like then? Okay, and maybe you can contrast that with kind of what you guys are trying to do.
I think there are few iterations of Oracle. I mean, in the kind of simplest term, it's something that you bring that exists, for example, in the Web2 world, right? A price feed from an exchange like Coinbase or Kraken, and you need that in the Web3 space in your smart contract, right? So you need a way to kind of bridge these two worlds with each other. And I mean, the simplest way is you just write a script that calls the API and then creates a transaction and pushes it to the smart contract. But I mean, if you think about it, if you're building a DeFi platform that has millions or billions of value locked, do you really want me to push the script that kind of is one of the primitives of the whole platform and can have a huge impact if the price feed is out of sync or things like that?
Yeah.
Probably not, right? So then you kind of move into the direction of how can you address this issue, right? Yeah. On one hand, how many parties should be involved in kind of providing these price feeds, and how should they essentially get it from kind of which sources? Are they limited by the Oracle provider essentially, or are they now able to say, okay, I am completely in control or want to be completely in control, like you can with Acurast, and define the sources essentially, or define the computation that is being done. And then this is being handed over to the data transmitters, and then they are executing this in their trusted execution environments, kind of putting then the data on chain.
Okay, cool. Let's get there in a second.
Yeah.
Because before we get any further, I want to ask you, what other use cases are you seeing besides DeFi? I've been asking a lot of people this question lately, and it's not the easiest question to answer, actually, right?
Yeah.
So what are you seeing as possible, actually valuable use cases for blockchain in general?
So it's very interesting also to think about it, but also to kind of explore a bit the notion of it, right? So we have been talking to enterprises, like I've mentioned, and what we see or also have heard from them is maybe on one hand they have a lot of data in some form, right? If it's a KYC company, they obviously have customer data. If it's a telecommunication company, they might have additional data, specifically like highly localized weather data, things like that, right? So you kind of give them a way through what we are doing with Acurast to create a data economy where they essentially gain the ability to monetize on data that they previously were not able to.
So, hey, I have this data and maybe it's useful to somebody.
Yes.
I can put it on the marketplace, and if people request it, I can be rewarded.
Yes, that's correct. And the nice part of it is you don't reveal the data that you're having. So you don't go on the marketplace and have a complete data dump of your data.
Interesting.
But you only fulfill the requests that are coming in.
Okay.
Right. So you're saying in the example of the KYC, how many users are there in Switzerland, because we're from Switzerland as the example, right? Aged over 18 that have interacted with platform X. And you get a number back that then says, okay, this is like 1,300 users have done that.
Okay. Can you talk about any of the enterprises you've been speaking with?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have been exploring as well kind of the various parts. So from like insurance companies to telecommunication companies. And it's quite interesting why telecommunication companies, because they are trying to find new ways to kind of generate businesses. Because they're essentially an infrastructure provider for a service that is a given, right? So it's becoming a commodity that everyone has access to cellular data, to kind of the cellular network. So they need to find different avenues. And then they are exploring these use cases because they see kind of down the road in 5 to 10 years, we really need a way to find a new kind of business case, right?
How do you approach them in a way that makes them interested? You know, there's this big gulf between what's happening in Web3 and people's knowledge of it, right?
Yes.
How do you get that message across?
That's a good question. And I think what it takes is time. I mean, the team that is behind Acurast has experience in like enterprise sales for other projects. That kind of gives us the advantage to maybe have the connections to certain enterprises already.
Okay.
So there's kind of an established communication channel already, and then we can take it from there essentially to kind of start exploring as well where they see some pain points with current the current infrastructure they might have, or if they're interested to take a look at the Web3 space because they see potential in that, right? But it's definitely, like I've mentioned, it's not the low-hanging fruit kind of thing, right? It's something that takes months and months in kind of preparation until you come to a certain conclusion.
Okay, a lot of persistence.
Yes.
Yeah, checking back in.
Yes.
Right.
And I mean, it's also what kind of the Astar team is doing, right? In that regard, it's very interesting that they have these partnerships with Sony Entertainment, for example, kind of taking them and showing them, look, this is like how the Web3 world could look like, right? And what kind of exploring with them also the potentials, how on one hand they can essentially apply what they are already having, or even kind of simplify certain use cases. And for us as Acurast, it's also very interesting kind of to be the bridge between their like current infrastructure that is based in the Web 2, but then they need to somehow find a way to bring this essentially into the Web 3 if they want to build in that environment. Or then have a way to monetize certain things in that world, right, through the marketplace.
Very interesting. Okay, let's talk about TEEs, because we have a few projects the audience of this channel may be familiar with, Fala, Integrity. You're not leveraging these projects. You are doing your own trusted execution environment organization. What's that look like on a protocol level?
Essentially, what we are doing with Acurast is currently in like the initial version, we're focusing on trusted execution environments that are found in mobile devices.
Okay.
So this is more specifically at the first stage, it's Android phones like Google Pixel, because they have dedicated hardware chips on these devices that are being used for like a lot of use cases, right? You have like mobile banking, for example, that essentially use the secure enclave of these devices, or you have a lot of crypto wallets that leverage the trusted execution environment to store and sign information essentially within this environment. And for us, it's interesting on one hand because we have a background in mobile security. We have worked together with financial companies before, essentially implementing security frameworks in that regard, both on iOS and Android. So we kind of bring that knowledge with us. And if you think about it, what is very interesting also for us is in terms of kind of a security aspect, because a mobile device, I mean, like the name implies, is mobile, right? You're taking it with you, like wherever you're going.
And leaving it places.
Yes.
Right.
So you leave it places, it gets stolen, and you still kind of, no one gets malicious access to kind of your mobile banking application that lives on this device.
Interesting. And it's also interesting because I think that Fala and Integrity are both leveraging Intel chips, right?
Yes.
But you guys are doing, I guess, different chips.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So what they're leveraging is Intel SGX, and Acurast will be able to leverage them as well. So the Intel SGX trusted security environments or hardware chips. For us, what we are doing is also on that regard, kind of a generic implementation. So we will have support for the iOS kind of secure enclave, but there will also be Intel SGX. There might be custom implementation with Taurus, for example, a Swiss custody provider that have their own trusted execution environment implementation. The only thing that will be a deciding factor is if you go onto the Acurast marketplace. If I'm a developer, I can then say, hey, I want only Android-based trusted execution environments.
Wow.
And also if the answer ends up on chain, it's visible there as well. Hey, this has been created by an Android trusted execution environment.
Okay.
So you have the flexibility in that system as well, not directly committing on one specific implementation.
Okay. What's the economy look like to convince people to give up a piece of their TEs to your purposes? What's that look like?
So we have the Acurast marketplace, and essentially the developers go onto this marketplace and say, hey, I have a piece of computation that I need to be executed, right? The price feed example that we have had. and I'm willing to pay a certain amount for that because I want it to be executed for a month. I want every 15 minutes, I want an answer. And I also have some parameters that I specify as a developer. Say I need a certain uptime and things like that. And I'm willing to pay a reward of, I don't know, 1,000 USDCs, for example, right? And this is then kind of on the other side, going to the data transmitters that are automatically matched with these parameters that have been defined by the developer.
Okay.
Because they are saying on the other side, hey, I have computation space available.
Okay.
And I'm accepting USDC, and I'm willing to do the execution, right?
Okay.
So you have then an automatic match between them, and then the job starts to be executed on the data transmitter side of things. And they are rewarded by essentially the data consumer.
Right. Okay. So the transmitters are the sellers.
Yes.
And the
the providers,
computers,
of the computational space that they essentially have.
And then just to repeat ourselves again, this is all happening on mobile devices right now.
Yes.
That's so interesting. Is that just because this is an area of your previous expertise?
Yes, I think that was one of the main reasons.
Sure.
So, I mean, the trusted execution environment and all the side of the data transmitter, that's what's happening on the mobile device, right?
Wow.
The off-chain computation part, that's what's happening there.
And does the mobile device have to be plugged into a computer, or is there some sort of application on the phone?
Yes, there is an application on the phone that essentially is like the data transmitter application that is capable to talk to the Acurast protocol, the Acurast marketplace, and kind of the destination chains as well on the other side.
I think there's a wide range of opinions on TEEs. Some people really believe in them. I've also heard from somebody much smarter than me that, SGX is getting exploited every 6 months. Where do you fall in there? And then how do we circumvent the risks of exploitation of these chips?
Yeah, I think it has a lot of controversy has been around like trusted execution environments.
Yeah.
Also, like you mentioned, Intel SGX with some side channel attacks, things like that. I think from our perspective, on one hand, why we are leveraging these mobile devices is, like I've said, right? These are in your pocket. You're carrying them around. There are billions of these devices essentially out there, right?
Right.
And you have companies like Google and Apple, essentially, they have all the incentive to keep these trusted execution environments unbroken. Because if they are broken and someone can maliciously access them, then we probably have other problems than on the Acurast side when you can exploit an e-banking application, for example, right?
Okay.
So that's a bit the perspective that we have.
It's interesting. Okay.
But also the approach that we are not focusing on one single trusted execution environment, kind of opening up the space as well, I think is one of the advantages or kind of conscious design decisions that we have taken.
Okay, very cool. So where are you guys at today? What's your relationship with Polkadot? And when are people going to start actually using the chain?
Yeah, so what we are building is the Acurast protocol, and this houses essentially the Acurast marketplace as a substrate-based chain. And we have essentially an MVP of this already implemented, where you can create shops, where they're being matched with data transmitters, where you can onboard as a data transmitter. So this currently runs in a testnet of ours already. And we're focusing kind of in the next few slot auctions on Kusama to start onboarding as a Kusama Parachain.
Interesting, cool.
For our incentivized testnet.
Yeah.
And then later down the road, we are also focusing then on Polkadot as well for the final productive deployment of Acurast.
You guys going to do the move, the migration?
Most likely. That's
with the same token set.
Yeah, so far that's the intention.
That's cool. I'm really liking projects doing that. It seems like a really smart way to go.
I mean, it's for us still something that we are considering, but I think one advantage is also kind of maintaining two different tokens and also still kind of having the value essentially behind them is very, very important for us as well. So that's kind of the conscious decision that we are trying to do as well in that regard.
Yeah, but in this way, you still get to have the experience of learning on Kusama, right? And iterating more quickly. And,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's essentially the stage that we are in now, right?
Okay.
We have we just released like a few days ago the Acurast console, which is the web interface for data transmitters. So what they essentially can do, they can onboard themselves within like 5 minutes as a data transmitter on Acurast through this user interface. And this is currently on the Acurast testnet.
Okay, I could do this today?
Yes, you could do that, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, where do I download the app for my phone?
So there's one thing that I need to mention.
Yes.
Is a dedicated mobile device. So it's not something that you're kind of have in your pocket and then on the side essentially use as well as a data transmitter.
Yeah.
But it's you buy dedicated mobile hardware essentially.
Oh, how do you do that? How do you ensure that that's the case?
So what we have is, do you mean that it's not on the same device?
Yeah, how do you ensure that I'm not carrying around
Yes.
my transmitter?
It's in a matter of the setup process.
Okay.
Because it's essentially the only purpose is then this phone as being a data transmitter.
So if I buy an Android device,
Yes.
I need to plug it into my computer, and my computer will do something to that device to make it a transmitter only?
You don't need to plug it in. You
Okay.
just scan a QR code.
Oh, and then what happens?
Then,
then some stuff happens.
Everything is being set up
Okay.
automatically, and then you're onboarded as a data transmitter.
And other features of the phone are taken off?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's really neat.
And it's within 5 minutes, even less.
Okay. So I should, if I was interested, I could buy a stack of
Yes.
cheap Android
Yeah,
phones.
yeah.
Or, I'm sure you have some, it needs to be of a certain model or something.
Yeah, there are some recommended devices
Yeah.
that we have.
Okay.
Usually of the pixel range,
Okay.
but I think one of the cheapest is like 200 USD that you
Great.
can get.
And then they're just connected to the internet and...
Yes, the
Transmit.
only thing, I mean, the requirement that you have then on the device is, like you said, it needs to be connected to the network, to a Wi-Fi, and it needs to be obviously powered up. So the battery needs to be as well charged up.
Sure. And as a transmitter, what's at stake for me? Am I staking tokens, or how do you ensure that I behave well?
That's a good question. And it's a bit twofold. So on one hand, because we use trusted execution environments and we can do what it's called an attestation, so a proof of the job execution without any kind of maliciously intent. So this is kind of backed by cryptography because the data transmitter always signs a proof of execution. We can essentially ensure that no one has tampered with the script that I have given you if I'm the developer in this case, and you're the data transmitter, then we can essentially attest that the script that I have written, you have followed it from top to bottom, and there's nothing in between, right? That you tried to push in there. So that's one kind of security that we get through these trusted execution environments. But this still means your device can go offline, right?
Yeah.
And we cannot do anything with the trusted execution environments about that. So that's why the marketplace comes with a reputation system.
Okay.
So that means if you're offline for a certain amount of time, you will lose reputation. If you fulfill the jobs, essentially, you will gain reputation.
Okay.
And
So
this
it's
is
the reputation that's slashed.
Yes.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yes. And it's also a parameter that I then can set as a developer, right? I can say, okay, I will only the highest trusted, kind of the highest reputation score on the platform. I want only them to fulfill the job, right?
Okay, and I imagine there's some redundancy as well, right? I'm not relying on a single device.
I mean, you can.
Oh.
If I'm as a developer say, okay, this might be for a test, or this might be a use case that is not that important to me, then I don't mind if a device goes offline. But I mean, essentially, it's in your hands as a developer, right? And it's also a term, kind of consideration, how much you're willing to pay, right?
I was just going to say, I imagine more devices, more cost.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like it. That's all the questions I have for now. You guys are trying to get a slot on Kusama.
Yeah.
Are you bidding right now?
Yes. So, I mean,
crowd loan or?
That's a good question.
Okay. I did have more questions.
No, we have prepared everything. We have kind of placed the signaling bit, let's say with like 1 KSM for the past few auctions. But we're still kind of deciding if it's going to be self-funded or if it's going to be a crowd loan.
Okay. Oh, big decision to make.
Yeah.
Are you guys an anonymous pair thread right now?
No.
Okay, you're up there.
Yes.
On the
So I
board.
mean, on Parachains.info, for example, it's labeled as Acurast.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, initially we thought there was kind of the time where there were no Kusama auctions. And
yes, right.
We thought, hey, look, now we kind of apply for a slot and get it kind of
on the cheap.
on the cheap, yeah. And it turned out that it was due to kind of an issue, and then all the renewals came up, right? Or still going on. Yeah. So that's why we were probably looking more towards also doing a crowd loan, essentially, also kind of giving the community a way to contribute. But
Very
it's
nice.
not finally decided yet.
Okay, but you guys aren't pushing. You're sitting back waiting for the right time and
yeah
looking for a cheaper slot, I imagine.
Yes, that's one thing. Also, I mean, obviously the renewals of like other chains, they need to happen. So it doesn't make sense that we kind of drive up the price for these projects. Mm-hmm. That's also one of the decisions, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
For maybe from a protocol perspective, it might make sense that a lot of KSM is locked up, but for like an economic perspective of the teams, probably not. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll follow you on the channel. We'll update our audience with your win when it happens.
Yes.
And cool. I'll think about buying a Pixel and getting on board here. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, we have regular webinars that we are kind of doing to onboard people, kind of get them the background on why they're doing kind of or setting up a data transmitter. And then there's it's on console.acurast.com is essentially the testnet version of it. So you can go on there with your Pixel phone that you bought and you can get started.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show and sharing everything.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. Maybe we can get caught up in a little while after everything's up and running.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Pascal.